Welcome everyone, we're just letting people in.
Good afternoon, Sam.
Good afternoon, community.
Sam, could I just ask a question? So, we've been finding it a lot easier to do transcription rather than try and write notes with our memories, but it says it's been disabled. Is there a reason for that?
Might have just been in the setting. We are recording the session,
Okay,
so there will be a record.
thank you.
Okay, Rod and Chris, I suggest we go. Christopher, are you ready?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the we're going to hear about our live video feed.
You, Christopher. Okay, welcome. Thank you for that, Christopher. So we have an hour and we're going to work really hard to stick to that. We're not going to have a break. As when any of us start speaking from the team, we'll introduce ourselves, which Christopher didn't. So I'll say that was my colleague, Christopher, who was one of the leaders of our steering group and part of our social lives team. Will you stay on mute if you're not speaking? That would be really great. And we are recording this session. So if you don't want your face on the screen, you can turn your camera off. And please do add any thoughts or ideas to the chat. If we have any time, we will maybe try and take some questions or comments at the end. But the truth is, we've got so much we want to cram into this hour with you that we haven't got loads of space for that. I think, Rod, if I can have my next slide, I'll quickly tell you what we're going to take you through. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the project, why we did it. We're going to tell you what we found out. We're going to share with you loads of brilliant resources that we've found, that other people's work that really speaks to and tells us all about why we should be hopeful. And we'll explain to you why we're doing this as on the first day of a week of 1,000,000 Acts of Hope. And then we're going to have you think a little bit about what you can do and think about next steps for all of us. And like I say, we've got an hour and we're going to try and get as much into that hour with you as we can. So as I said, people are going to introduce themselves as they first speak, rather than me doing lots of introductions. So now I'm going to hand you over to Clive Parry, who will tell you who he is and tell us about our social lives.
Thanks, Sam. My name is Clive Parry. I used to be the director for ARC England, and ARC is the Association for Real Change. It's a membership organisation, and most of our members, or most of the members of ARC, are organisations that provide services to people with learning disabilities and autistic people. So that's who I am. I don't work for ARC anymore, but I was very involved in this project from the beginning. So I have been asked to come back and be involved in this launch, and I'm really pleased to be here. So I want to start with where we started, really, and I want to say it was all Sam Clark's fault, actually. Hang on a second, I just need to check my notes there. Sorry, no, it was Sam Clark's idea. It was Sam Clark's idea, but I think it's also her fault. So this came about from a conversation Sam and I were having. The pandemic was just at an end, and Sam and I were talking, and she was saying that she'd heard from people around the track that some of the things they used to do before the pandemic, they didn't do anymore, even though they could. You know, the restrictions are no longer there. So we wondered if this might be something that lots of people were feeling and lots of people were experiencing. And it turned it into this project idea called Our Social Lives. The idea really was, as a piece of research, to find out what people are doing, who they're doing it with, how they're doing it, and whether anything has changed for them, whether things are better for them since the pandemic or whether things might not be perhaps quite as good. And by that we mean, you know, if somebody was going swimming once a week before the pandemic and they no longer do because it just hasn't happened anymore, trying to find that sort of thing out. What we did was focus on these themes you can see on the slide. So we were interested in how people felt connected with each other and their everyday well-being that came through contacts with other humans. So that could be friends, it could be family, it could be paid support, it could be whoever people choose to spend their time with. And the reason why the timing of this is so important is that we think that the pandemic changed things in ways that we're not necessarily that clear about. So the other thing I wanted to say about the project is, for me personally, it was a big learning curve, a big learning experience, because this is the first project I've been involved in that is genuinely co-produced. Everybody on this call will know that we talk a lot about co-production, and sometimes we co-produce and sometimes we think we're co-producing, but we're not. And I want to say I thought I knew what co-production was, and I kind of did. I could probably tell you what it was, but I had never felt it. I hadn't actually felt what it feels like, and it does feel very interesting. I like to be in control of things. I like to, if I'm going to be really honest, I quite like telling other people what to do. So it's not a great admission. It's not. I don't like hearing myself say that, but I think it's true. But actually, what I had to learn with this project is it's not for me to do that, and I had a different role. And I think it was really powerful to see how this project came together in a genuinely co-produced way. So I want to just say thank you to a few people at this point. So thanks very much to Sam. I know I said it was her fault at the beginning, but it's actually Sam's idea, and I'm really grateful for all the support Sam gave me personally with this. Sally at Paradigm, Katie and Christopher you'll meet later, Rod and Liz you'll meet later, and everybody else at ARC. But also I want to say thank you to the RICS Foundation, who provided some funding for the project. And I think we also should remember the ARC Research Unit Steering Group, which is a group of people who helped us make the research happen. So I can move on to the next slide, please. So what we did, well, we created in the first instance a sort of leadership group, a management group. We're calling it a steering group here. And that was people with lived experience who took control of this project and made it happen. So they're the folk who did it, and you'll meet Katie and Christopher properly later on. But essentially, we supported 25 people who have a learning disability or who are autistic. We trained them really so that they could become interviewers and researchers. The training itself was co-produced, as you can see on the slide, and everything we did was co-produced. So the research then was all about interviewing people, and the supported people who we trained interviewed people in their own lives and in their own networks and asked them some questions about their social life. Can I have the next slide, please? And I think Sam's appearing, which means hurry up. Just very quickly then, we interviewed a lot of people. So our group of researchers interviewed 109 people, and they found out about the things they do and how they spend their time socially. Next slide, please. I think, yeah. So this is the sort of stuff we wanted to find out. What's working for you? What's good? What's not so good? So what are the things that are not really how you'd like it to be? And what are the things that are, if you are having difficulty doing the things you want to do socially, why is that? What are the barriers? What are the things that are stopping you from doing it? And what could we change? Who needs to change things to make it better for you? And the idea of this is for people to make sure that we're making sure that people have the very best social lives that they can and are spending time with the people they want to spend their time with, doing the things they want to do. And the next slide, please. I'm going to hand over to Rod now, who's going to tell us what that group of researchers found out.
Thanks, Clive. Yeah, so I'm Rod. I also work for ARC England, doing a number of different things, and I sort of coordinated the work from ARC's point of view. So did all the co-production work, co-delivered the training to the interviewers, and supported the process throughout. So I'm just going to spend 5 minutes now taking you through some of the headlines. It's absolutely not all. There's a wealth of material here, and obviously you'll have the links and everything to have a deeper dive into the research. But what I'm going to take you through is some of the things that kind of stood out for us. But take your own look and see what actually makes sense to you and your experience. So let's say just a few of the headlines to start the conversation going. So in relation to social connections, what we found was that people had good connections as long as they were with the people that they were immediately close to. So outside people's immediate families, connections started to sort of dry up, evaporate really quite quickly. People struggled for connection outside their immediate physical environment. And another thing that really jumps out throughout all of the research is how loneliness is still such a huge factor for many people with learning disabilities and many autistic people. And that feels as though that's something that hasn't changed for quite a long time now, despite the fact, and it's worth making a positive point about that, the last sentence there on the slide, which is that really encouraging thing is the amount of new tech that people are now using and making use of all the advantages there are on things like their mobile phones, their tablets, and their computers. So good use, good uptake of new technology. Found that very encouraging. It really gives us something to build on. In relation to independence, what we found here was that, again, it was generally positive, which to me at least I think was a bit of a surprise. Most of the people we interviewed were making their own decisions about where they went, how they got there, when they got home, although obviously some people still dependent on other people to make that sort of thing happen for them. So generally positive and some progress, it felt, at least for some people. In terms of support, this is something that ARC one thing that ARC's going to be working on in the next few months about the transport barriers, the middle point there. We're just starting a new impact network on how to make public transport more accessible to people with learning disabilities and autistic people. And if you're interested in taking part in that work or hearing about that work, then please do get in touch with me. It's clearly a very important aspect of the barriers that people are facing. A lot of work still to be done there. And I also wanted to make a point again about the last sentence on this slide. It says about no paid support, but actually having no paid support in people's lives isn't necessarily a bad thing, where people are making sort of genuine community connections in their immediate lived environments. Quick point to make about hobbies and interests. I think what struck me about this one was just the breadth of interests and things that people were doing. We're pretty much kind of anything you can think of, somebody somewhere was doing. So again, that's hugely encouraging. The downside to that, again, is the last sentence on the slide, which is the barriers to participation. So even though people are interested in lots and lots of things, their opportunities to participate in those things remain quite limited for a variety of reasons, some of them external, some of them internal. On safety, I think the interesting thing here is that people really engaged with this and started seeing ways in which their immediate neighbourhoods, their immediate communities could be improved. And I think one of the pieces of work that ARC would be interested in doing over the next few months and years will be how we can ensure that people are able to take action on that sort of thing. So what can people do to address those obvious solutions? Can we equip people to lobby for change and indeed lead that change? The barriers to participation, I think no particular surprises here. Again, these would be issues that have been going back for a very long time now. And I think one of the issues that stands out for me is that there are things to do, but people need support in order to be able to do them. And the real negative, again, last bullet point on that slide, is that people want to do things at the time when most other people do them, but it's the time in which they seem to be least able to do so. So evenings and weekends where there are real opportunities to get out, build connections, participate in communities, are the times when people are most struggling to be able to do those things. That's a real standout point for me across the whole of the research. And my final slide here is about budgeting. And what we found on this, and it's stuff that was replicated in findings from another piece of research that I got involved in last year, the Digital Lifeline project with Manchester Metropolitan University. One of our findings is how few supported people have any control in relation to money in their lives. Despite the fact that I think that the rise of apps and online banking and actually the support from banks is pretty decent a lot of the time, despite the fact there's lots of support to be able to do so, very, very few people have any control over the money in their lives, their budgeting. Okay, that's enough from me. Thank you. Christopher, over to you.
Christopher.
It's just unmuting.
Hello, everyone. I would like to share with everyone the Our Life Project Wicked, which is about minute website developed by the University of East London, and that is accessible to everyone. We have logged our journey of the project on the wiki. It can be accessed with a link and password if anyone would like it and look at it. The wiki did really help us with our work.
And Christopher, sorry, it's Rod here again. I'm thinking that we're going to be sending people the link for accessing the wiki after today. And there's just loads more information on there that we haven't been able to include in the presentation today.
Hi everyone, my name's Liz Collins. I'm the Relationship and Communications Manager for ARC England, and I knew my colleagues, Rod and Clive, and the team with Learning Disability England and Paradigm were working on the project, but I really got involved when it came to words and pictures. That is my area that I enjoy doing. So that was when we started to put together the report, which you can see at the link that Sam shared in the chat, and we'll also send it around to people and you can see it on the page there. If we could have the next slide, please, Rod. So what we've done is we put all the findings into the report, and for this meeting we have gathered all of the resources together that people suggested around what can we do to overcome some of the barriers that people reported were in their lives with regard to them having the best social life possible. So we grouped them around the different themes you can see there. We've got friendships and relationships, and transport, money, skills, safety, access to what's available, so knowing what's out there in your community and in the online world as well, employment, access to your own private space. That was a very important one that came across. So we've got things in there around sort of could be what the law says about your access to private space, and it could be things to do with relationships as well. Access to technology is, of course, very important. How do we do that safely? And how services can offer support. So there's some pieces in there that are specifically for people who support people with a learning disability and autistic people, whether that's an organisation or perhaps commissioners of services. There's some guidance and advice in there. We've also listed the workshop and pledges gathered at the Learning Disability England conference that happened earlier this year, and a piece of research that took place at Bristol University called Show Me How and Where You Belong. And we've also got, you can see the picture there of the Our Social Lives conversation board game, which was developed by Katie and Christopher at Paradigm. And that takes you through a series of conversation topics that you could do by yourself, or perhaps with some friends or in your supported environment, to go through to help you think about what's your social life like now? How would you like it to be? What sort of things would you like to do? How can you enable doing those things? Do you need some support to do that? Just to start the conversation off. Rod, if we could have the next slide, please. I can show you an example of what one of the pages looks like. So if you click on the friendships and relationships link, it takes you through to a page of all the resources here. If I was brave enough to do a live web link for this talk, then I'd be able to scroll down, but if something can go wrong in a presentation, then it will. So I decided we'll just look at the static slide. You can see here, for example, at the top, we've got a link to Supported Loving, who have lots and lots of guides and advice. And at the end, you can see there's a resource icon there, so you can identify what kind of resource we're linking you out to. Is it a guide? Is it a game? Rod, if we link to the next slide, then you can see here are all the different icons that we've used. So it might be some training that you could access. It might be a resource, whether that's something printed or something online. It might be a service. It might be some research. We've got a game, more than one, obviously, in addition to our conversation starter game. There are some cards that are very useful. There's obviously the sunflower scheme with the card and a lanyard. And there's also things like the just a minute card to tell people you might just need a little bit of extra time to respond to them or to make a decision. We've also linked to campaigns and marked them with that icon. And there's an award as well for people who are showing great talent in being kind and promoting friendships and relationships. Out of this work as well, we think there could be some campaigns, and Rod talked about we want to promote the idea of people being able to take action, but we think we need to do some more thinking and talking about that one. There also might be a piece of work around, people told us that lots and lots of services and clubs haven't started again after COVID. So we'd like to look at what we might be able to do in that area. Obviously, sometimes it's to do with funding, but sometimes it's to do with just getting things started again. So we'd like to talk more about what the problems might be and whether it's the right thing for us to do to get started in that. And now over to Sam Clark, who's going to talk to us about 1 Million Acts of Hope.
Thank you, Liz. And what Liz just said is absolutely the reason why we're doing this on the first day of 1 Million Acts of Hope Week, which lots and lots of community groups, charities, different kinds of organisations have come together. I've just put the link in the chat. But it's about saying and reminding us all that actually there is loads and loads of reasons to be hopeful. And I didn't know he was going to be here, but I had written down what a Learning Disability England member, Kamudu, said, who is actually here, I think, that hope encourages us to act and to make positive changes together. And that's just such a brilliant thing to remember, isn't it? And I'll put the blog that him and Gary wrote together in the chat in a minute. So we're doing this as part of saying, look at what people are doing, look at what is possible, and what can we do? And that might be small things, but all of it moves us, hopefully, to a better place. And I guess that's why we're doing this together apart and building all that great work that Liz has amazingly helped us collect and put in a place where you can find all linked to the stuff that people said about having a good social life. So I'm going to hand you over now to Katie and Clive, who are going to talk to us about some of those things we might start thinking about doing, or you might already be doing, that we want to just remind ourselves to be hopeful.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sam. Hello, Clive.
Hi, Katie.
Trust the airwaves. Yeah, and I just think there couldn't be a better week to share this report and resource package than a Million Acts of Hope week. I mean, and we're going to be looking at our call to action with hope. You know, there's just so much hope, and sometimes it's very easy to forget that life, you know, becomes bigger than, you know, feels like all of us really, but there's always something more possible. And Clive and I are just going to touch on that. So Clive, do you want to tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, the things I think about when I read the report, it did take me back to the first conversations I had with Sam Clark about the impact of the pandemic. The pandemic was a dreadful thing, and we mustn't forget the impact it had on many, many people. But there were also some things that were actually quite positive that came out of it, I think. And from ARC's position, when I was working at ARC, we were in contact with all of these providers. And it felt to me as if every week a provider would say, look, we're doing this to help people connect. We're doing that to help people connect. Now, of course, they were using technology to do that. And I think that was potentially quite a positive thing in many ways for a lot of people who were able to. They learned how to use technology that they hadn't used before. But it was also a time for a lot of people that was actually quite creative. And it felt as though there was a lot of possibility during that time about how we could come together, because we couldn't come together, if that makes sense. So there were so many restrictions placed on us. It stopped us from doing the things we wanted to do. But somehow that seemed to create some fresh thinking about how can we do this and what can we do? And so it seemed to me that one of the things that was different in the pandemic was that people's roles and boundaries were a bit fuzzier. So it didn't feel so much as though we had to ask permission. Can I do this? Can we do that? Will the commissioner pay for this? Is this okay for our service to do that? Will my pay support do this? It felt to me, and maybe others have a different experience, but it felt to me as if we were a little bit less constrained, a little bit less restricted at the same time that we were very restricted, if that makes sense. So I guess what I wanted to say was, what are the things that we could do if we didn't feel we needed to ask permission? If we didn't feel that we needed somebody else to tell us how to do it or what to do, and what would it look like if we just did it? And if it turns out not to be the right thing, we can deal with that when that comes along, can't we? We can say, oh, okay, we can do that differently next time. But there seemed to be a very can-do attitude at times that came out of the pandemic, and I wondered if, for a lot of us, we forgot about that after the pandemic and almost went back to how we were before, but not quite as good in some ways. And actually, I suppose what I wanted to try and get us to think about is, could we think like that again? Do we need a pandemic? Do we need that external pressure to give us that thinking, that creative thinking? And I don't know, but the slide says it's more than activities. And I think the important thing for me is it's more than commissioned services. I know that somebody in the chat has talked about money, and I think that's really important. If you read the report, money is a really, really, really important part of that. But I'd also say sometimes we get a bit stuck in that, and we maybe overlook the things that we might be able to do that don't require so much money and just require us to think, well, can we do this? Final thing I wanted to say was that the report, it doesn't use this word, but it seems to me that the word agency is important, and people feeling that they have agency, which is the ability to do what they want to do without anybody else telling them they can do it. And I guess if money is the barrier, I wondered if there's a route for people to come together and talk about that. And is it possible to do that in a social way? Can you do it in the pub? Could you do it in a way that brings people together have that social connection. But the thing we're talking about is, how do we get the money to do this thing that we want to do? And if you have paid support and services in your life, you know, can we have your bid writer to write the application so we can do this, please? So that's something you can do, you know, potentially without money in order to get money. I don't want to gloss over the fact that finances are really important, particularly now because we've got this cost of living crisis, and it's clear in the report that, and all the things that I think it's Pauline said in the chat, are very real challenges. But for me, the thing that I wanted to focus on this slide is that can-do attitude that a lot of people had in the pandemic, and that not needing to ask permission. I really liked that, and I wondered if we could do a bit more of it.
Yeah, that's great, Clive. And I think that it's really worth remembering that for most of us, connection is fairly straightforward. You know, we can choose to meet up when we want to. We can, you know, turn our phone, our notifications off if we want to. But all of those things are not quite so easy for people who rely on others for support, either paid or family support. You know, sometimes there's a big effort in actually trying to decide what it is that you want to do. And again, if you've not had much experience of trying different things, that's another barrier, isn't it? So there is something, you know, more than activities. It really is about feeling that you belong somewhere, being, you know, in the heart of your community, wherever your community is. You know, we talk about the community as if it's this place to go to, but it's the place really that we feel that we belong. So that could be, you know, in your little social room, in your supported living setting, or it could be in your choir, or it could be, you know, down the pub or in the cricket club, wherever you hang out, wherever you feel that you belong, you know. And it's much, social lives are much more than activities and hobbies. You know, we can all undertake our hobbies on our own, you know, colouring or, you know, listening to music on our own. But our social lives are about being with others. So if we go to the next slide, please, Rod, we're really inviting people here in this Million Acts of Hope week, the start of the Million Acts of Hope, for all of us to think what we can actually do to make something happen. You've said take action. That action can be in different ways for all of us. It could be inviting your neighbour for a cup of tea. You know, it doesn't have to be big. As Sam mentioned, you know, they could be tiny little changes, things that you decide to do. It could be saying hello to the person who's standing at the bus stop with you, alongside you. You know, this is where connection begins, and we've all got a role to play there. So what I'd like to invite all of us to do, including the presenters, if we will, just to have a little think about your role and what you could do this week, whether it is a personal act or something that you could lobby your organisation to do, or perhaps, you know, you have the power to make those changes within your organisation, or as a community member, as an ordinary citizen, what could we each do this week to make a change? So we've got the chat box open, and if you'd like to just have a think and pop something in, and you can continue that as we continue with the rest of the presentation. But there is always more possible, and I think that is really worth hanging on to, particularly at those times where we feel that we're losing hope. So let's do this thing. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Katie. Well, no, I was just thinking, I've just put mine in the chat, and whether other people, mine is I'm just helping my friend. My friend loves climbing, you know, those indoor climbing walls, and a place he used to go closed down, and I'm helping him find a new climbing club local to him. Has anybody else got anything to offer that they want to share in the chat, or that you're thinking about?
And that's great.
Brilliant.
We don't actually have to do it, you know, like you're saying, Sam, you're helping somebody to find a way to do it. We don't actually have to be involved in that. We could be.
Some of you have met me in real life. I'm not a woman to go climbing. You know, I'm not built for climbing, but some people are. Nice, Wendy, that you're going to share the information and the resources with people so that they might use it. Yeah, brilliant. Does anybody else want to add anything?
Communicate,
Go on,
communication,
Committee.
communication is key. You have to communicate with each individual according to how they learn things. So that's how
Yeah.
I do stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And it's different for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Rachel, go be a gig buddy. If you love a gig, what a great thing to do is to go with somebody else who wants to see the same thing. Again, I'm probably not built to be a gig buddy for most things, but I'm very glad other people are. And I like that Katie's going to play the social lives game with lots of different friends. That's nice. Oh, nice. Wendy, you're reconnecting with the moms from the school group. You will all look just the same, I'm sure. Brilliant. Thank you all. But we want this to be something that we can all think about. So my friend who loves climbing has some people who are paid to support him in his life. And they have found it really difficult to think about how they could help him get back to doing some stuff that he's missing. And so I kind of want to work out with them what has stopped them. So I've kind of been going, let's just find a way through this. Let's just find a way out. So I think it's really good for us all to just stop and think what's stopping me doing that as well sometimes, and see if we can just make it simple and a small step. So Camudo, I can see you're a travel buddy. That's fantastic. And Carla, you're meeting all the quality advisors. Oh, how nice if you're getting to see each other in real life. Some people are going to be taller or shorter than you think. I'm convinced. That's brilliant. Thank you all. But really, this is our call to action to you to think about what can you do that'll just help us make a difference so that more people get the social life that's right for them. So I think now we'll keep watching what people are putting in the chat. But Rod, is it over to you now? Yeah.
It is to do a little bit of a summary before I hand back to Christopher. Yeah. And I think, well, I'll come back to, I think, the key message that I think has been jumping out for me. I've been trying to keep an eye on what people have been saying during their bits. And well, I suppose I actually start off with the key word, which is hope. Sam, you started off by saying the whole thing was about, why we should be hopeful. Clive then talked about the experiences of starting the whole project. In a sense, the project wasn't, from ARC's point of view, it wasn't just about the findings of the project. It was about the process of the project as well, how the project actually happened. And from ARC's point of view, was such a big step in terms of, as Clive said, doing a bit of genuinely co-produced work, which took us in all sorts of interesting directions. And Clive just described it as a powerful experience, and I would back him up on that. It felt as though it's taken ARC in a completely different direction to where we were before, and shows that change is possible, I think. I then spoke about, I think that one of the key issues that is facing us within ARC's membership, within service providers, the service provider community, and one of the things that I would like to stress with people is how we need to be much more flexible in how we offer support to people. And that one of the clear messages that I pointed out that springs out from the research for me is that people need connection when at the moment it's not being provided for them. That people are not being supported to go out the weekends, they're not being supported to go out in the evenings. That's precisely the time when people need to be getting out and about to improve their chances of making connections and meeting people. Liz talked us through the resources that we've compiled as a result of the project, all the work, all the brilliant work that's already going on. And it is absolutely massive. Liz, how many pages does this now run to? Are you still there, Liz? And can you unmute? How many pages of resources have you compiled?
So the whole report now runs to 49 pages.
Yeah, and it just
Emily-
keeps getting bigger.
There is an easy read version as well that's slightly fewer pages. And the resources section, I think we've got at least 10, 11, maybe 12 pages of resources on the website, hopefully organised in a nice, easy to use format that won't be too taxing to work your way through.
Yeah, so an absolutely massive amount of resource, absolutely huge amounts of things already going on. And Liz also talked us through the game that Christopher and Katie had devised in part of their work for Paradigm as well, just as one example of that. But there's so much to dive into, and more that we're uncovering all the time, and we will continue to add to that list as more things become obvious and known to us. And if you've got stuff, if you have a look at those resource pages, if there's stuff that you're aware of that isn't listed here at the moment, let us know. We're going to add it in. So that's a resource that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Sam then talked about the Million Acts of Hope. We are in Million Acts of Hope week, and I'll come back to that in a bit. And talked about that there's lots of good reasons to be hopeful. So despite all the limitations and the problems that the research identified, I think it did also give us lots of those ideas of hope as well. Lots of reasons to be cheerful, lots of reasons to be hopeful. And Sam quoted a member of Learning Disability England, was it Kamudu, I think? Sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly, who had said on a previous occasion that hope makes us act and makes positive change, helps us make positive changes together. And even small things move us somewhere better. And that was a message that was really reiterated by Katie and Clive then in the bits that they talked about a few minutes ago. Something more is possible, Katie said. Clive talked about the uptake of tech as being a very positive step. So yeah, there were positive things that did come up through COVID, and that was certainly one of them. And again, has emerged from other pieces of research that I've been involved with, is the amount of tech that people are now using, the opportunities that presents to people. Clive also said, yeah, it's about getting creative. And again, one of the positive things that had come out of a very desperate time that COVID was for many people was the amount of creativity, the blurring of boundaries, the risks that people were prepared to take in terms of just getting out and doing things. And my own experience, as in supporting people through that period as well, was that say blurred boundaries in terms of people being able to learn together. So we felt as though we were being introduced to new ways of doing things, but we were learning those at the same time, and so some of those power differentials started to break down. And Clive also said maybe what we need to do 5 years on from COVID now is to recapture some of the can-do attitude that emerged through the pandemic, and also made the point that we found out then, as we should continue to find out now, that it's about more than just commission services. There are things that we can do if we just start to think outside the box. And then Sam, I think, with her closing message, reiterating that it's about taking simple, small steps, and again, even small things take us somewhere better. So I think that in this Million Acts of Hope week, the chief message that has come out from this afternoon is that despite the fact that there are all sorts of challenges that are clearly still there are so many positives. There are so many things that we can do, and there are so many things that we are already doing.
Thank you, Rod.
And I would like to say thank you for everyone for joining the Change Purple Dartmouth Worth More and keep going.
Thank you, Christopher. That's a great message. Start small and keep going and keep growing.